When a kid is completely melting down in the store at
Mhm.
bedtime, whenever, what's actually the fastest way to help them calm down in the moment?
Well, I'm going to flip that on its head and say if you're in a full meltdown, it's like when a storm has hit, you pretty much have to ride it out, right? Because if a child is having really big feelings, whether that's anger or disappointment or frustration or whatever it is, putting a lid on that isn't healthy, right? I know it's tempting to say, stop crying, it's okay, and calm down. But the truth is the healthiest thing to do is help them safely go through that emotional storm. Now, that's not to say there aren't plenty of soothing strategies, but what the crux of my work and my new book, The Joyful Child, is proactive calming strategies that we make a consistent part of our day so that we reduce the frequency of those meltdowns. But when you're in a meltdown, the most important thing that you can do as the grown up is calm yourself, is keep yourself steady. That's truly the most important thing because when we co-escalate, meaning child's voice goes up, our voice goes up, right? We just match one for one kind of a thing. Now two people are overwhelmed instead of one person. We need to be steady like an anchor in their storm. I like to think of it as they're a little tiny boat and they're in a storm. They're being whipped around by the wind and the waves. You need to be the steady anchor and show them that their big feelings aren't going to freak you out. You're going to stay steady. Obviously, safety is the most important thing, first and foremost. But after that, it's okay to let them cry. And this is really hard for parents to hear, especially when you're in the grocery store. I have been there. I have literally taken a screaming child and thrown her over my shoulder and walked out of the grocery store, because she wouldn't calm down. But it's the healthiest thing to do is to safely let them process those emotions. And then any soothing strategies that might work. And that might be long, deep breaths. That might be things like a temperature change, cold on the face, going outside. It might be a warm blanket or a hug. It's different for every child. But those are soothing strategies. Those aren't strategies to stop the meltdown. So it's a little bit of a mindset shift that I think
Mm.
can be really hard, and understandably so.
So it sounds like you're really just taking a step back, allowing the kid to process their emotions. There's not really, you shouldn't be actively intervening with the kid. It's more of a personal journey and accepting where the child is and then moving from there. Is that a
Yeah,
good way
if
of
you
making
think
sense
about
of it?
it like,
Hmm.
you know, the ice cream cone, the ice cream falls off the cone into the dirt,
Hmm.
right? Super upsetting for a 4-year-old. Of course. We're crying. The ice cream truck has already left. We can't get another one. It's really upsetting. If you say, stop crying, now you've dismissed how they feel. If you say, don't worry, we're going to drive to the nearest ice cream place and get another ice cream, now you've fixed it for them and you've prevented them the opportunity to work through that disappointed feeling, to work through that frustrated feeling. And guess what happens when we grow up? There are lots more opportunities in life, unfortunately, to be angry, disappointed, frustrated, all of the above. So it's really important to let children, especially young children, figure out how to deal those feelings and to learn, by the way, that there's another side, right? You can feel those awful feelings for 5, 10, 15 minutes and they're going to pass. The storm always passes. You can be okay and feel those feelings. And when I'm a steady grown-up presence near you, that says, okay, I'm safe while I'm feeling this awful feeling and flailing about and kicking and screaming on the dirt, because of my ice
Yeah.
cream fell. There's a safe presence who's that person is not getting freaked out by my tantrum. They're steady, they're safe. I'm going to be okay. That's what it teaches them.
Awesome. So I want to shift into some of your own work.
Yeah.
So much of your work is built on the idea that kids can learn through calm and movement and play and
Mm.
not being told to sit still. And so why does that work better for young brains?
Children learn through movement, right? Children's brains develop essentially from the bottom up. So they first learn how to stand up and how to walk and how to run and how to balance and where their bodies are in space. And all of that precedes the cognitive development. So children need to move for their brains to develop. So what happens when children haven't had enough movement is that all their brains can do when you ask them to hold still and pay attention and follow your directions is go, don't wiggle, don't wiggle, don't wiggle, don't wiggle, don't wiggle, don't wiggle. And they have no capacity left over to say, okay, I was asked to sit still and take out my math worksheet and get my pencil and right? They just don't have the capacity. They have to move. Movement is a pathway to regulation. It's not the opposite. And somewhere along the line, we got this idea that children have to calm them down, we have them sit still and not move. And it's actually completely the opposite. If you're struggling, if your child is struggling with impulsive behaviors or crankiness or low energy or like any number of things, movement is typically the answer. Say, go run around the house 3 times and then come back to me. And I guarantee you, they'll be in a completely different frame of mind when they come back. It's
I
really
totally yeah.
magical.
I totally agree, and I think that applies to just life in general, like, me personally.
Yeah, it does.
Like, if I'm dealing with whatever, just going on a walk or getting myself to move around really is such a low-hanging fruit way of helping my
Yeah.
emotions.
I'm so glad you said that because it's for all ages, right? I
Yeah.
do the same thing. When I sit at my desk too long and I don't take breaks and I'm on my laptop and I'm like, what am I doing? I get up and if I can't go for a walk, I will literally just shake or jump, right? Or put on a great song for 1 minute and just dance around. And it is remarkable what it does for our nervous system.
Yeah, I like to call it, like, a rapid state change mechanism. It's something that you can
Absolutely.
it's takes seconds, like you mentioned, and it can really just set the tone for the rest of your day, so I think it's really important that you're focusing on that with kids.
Yeah. And with young
Yeah.
children, there's so many easy ways to do it. And I think sometimes educators in particular, right? You have a large group of kids. I understand why you are hesitant to get them all up and jumping around, right? Because that feels like chaos. I get it. But there's lots of ways to do it that don't have to be chaos. And you put boundaries around it and you practice and how you're going to stop and what the rule is, or maybe the lights go off when it's time to hold still, something like that. I understand that that can be challenging and it's still really important. It can literally be like, we're going to do 20 kangaroo jumps and we're going to count out loud. 1, 2, and we all do it together, right? And then we know that at 20, we're done and we sit back down. But those 20 jumps have had a huge effect on our nervous systems.
Yeah, so kind of delving more into this movement and mindfulness connection, how did you actually discover this as a phenomenon in the first place? I know your book Breathe Like a Bear started as your own solutions to endless bedtime battles. So how did you land on breathing and movement as the way
I mean, it's not like it's my invention or idea
in?
by any stretch of the imagination. There's so much written about it. There's so much out there. But my particular approach to it is that there can be these bite-sized activities that we can do, that we can weave throughout our day with young children. And my new book, The Joyful Child, is all about this. It's organized by time of day, and it's how to weave in small, mindful activities, whether that's movement or breathing or an imagination-based activity, into the routines you're already doing, because they don't have to be long to be effective.
Yeah.
There's actually a great study, and it's in children, that it takes only 4 long, deep breaths to significantly alter their stress physiology. So it really isn't a lot of time that you need. And I think there's sometimes an idea that, we have to sit on a meditation cushion for 15 minutes and look like this and, breathe in and out to find our Zen calm. It's not true at all. And we can breathe like a bear. We can do candle breath, where we slowly breathe and blow toward our candle flame and see it dance and wiggle in our mind for 30 seconds. And it can have a really strong effect on calming us down. So I think it was when I started to go into schools and
Mhm.
spend a lot of time with large groups of children, and I had to figure out how to engage them. And there's no way you're going to get 300 kids in a gym to just sit still and breathe and be mindful, right? it had to be active. I had to meet them where they are. So that's why all of my practices and my books and my music are all geared toward action, movement, music, rhythm, clapping, dancing, which can all be mindful activities. They can all build self-awareness. They can all lead to calm and nervous system regulation because that's where children live. They live in a world of imagination and wiggling and singing and dancing and moving and bouncing. And when we meet them there, engage them there, and then lead them where we want to go toward these skills of self-regulation that we want them to have, that's when it's effective. If we try to do it like grown-ups do it, it just doesn't, it's just not meeting them where they are, you know?
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Like, there's this misconception with mindfulness that you have to sit by yourself in a room and
Right.
just be quiet, but
Light
this
a
is really not the
candle, have some
case. Yeah.
incense. Yeah. Right.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
this is
No,
really not the case. Like,
that's not the
with
case.
kids, they enjoy to move around, they enjoy to do all of these social things, and mindfulness
Right.
can fit into all of these different facets of their life. And I think your work has really shown that, in the school, in movement, etc., you can find ways for being mindful. And I think that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Mindfulness just means bringing your full awareness, your full presence to what's happening in your mind and your body and around you. I mean, that's all it means, right? And ideally, I
Yeah.
add with kids, this is actually Susan Kaiser Greenland. She's the
Mm.
wonderful author of, is it Growing Up Mindful? I think I'm getting the name of her book wrong. I'm not sure. But anyway, she's wonderful. And she says, paying attention with curiosity and kindness. And I
Hmm.
love that, right? It's not paying attention with judgment, like it's paying attention with curiosity and kindness. And so, with that as our definition, and like so many activities can be mindful, right? You can take a mindful walk. You can mindfully jump up and down with your child for, a minute and a half when you're paying attention and developing that self awareness. So, mindfulness sometimes gets a bad rap, or, there are just misconceptions around it, honestly. It's a very simple concept. It doesn't mean that it's easy. Easy is a different thing because a lot of us are in our heads thinking about what happened this morning, worrying about what might happen in the future. But when we practice it more and more, we get better at it, us and children.
So what is like a go-to mindfulness breathing exercise that you use with kids? Can you maybe walk us through one of those?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, let's see. Two of the most popular ones of mine are Breathe Like a Bear, which is where the book came from, and I use this with my youngest for years at bedtime, which is just imagining you're in a cozy cave and you're getting ready to hibernate for the winter. And at bedtime, I would spend some time getting him really cozy and his blankets just so and all comfy. But I do this in school assemblies with hundreds of children too. And I invite them to close their eyes if they'd like to. Not, they don't have to. And imagine they're in their cozy cave. And when bears hibernate for the winter, they take long, slow breaths in and out through their noses. Let's take a long breath in and let it out. And we do that a few more times. And we imagine how warm and cozy and safe we are in our bear caves. And I just lead them through a little bit more breathing like that. And it's almost like a guided relaxation of envisioning their cozy, warm cave for as long as you want. It could be 30 seconds. It could go for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. By the end of about a minute, my younger son would be asleep because the long, slow, deep breaths, the imagining he was in a cozy cave. So it's really simple, but the childlike concept engages children so that, the mindfulness part of it, the deep breaths that are actually stimulating that vagus nerve and making them feel really calm is a side benefit they're not thinking about. But it just works because if it's not fun and engaging for children, if it doesn't meet them where they are, coming back to what we were talking about a minute ago, they're not going to want to do it. But I've done this with hundreds of kids and had them be totally still and completely engaged because it's fun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, your work with Breathe Like a Bear, it reminds me of imagination. Like as kids, we're very imaginative about the world and different places, and
Yeah,
that's certainly something that when I've been designing mindfulness content for kids within Cappy's journey, I've
right.
definitely framed every guided meditation along the lines of how can we make each lesson an imaginative experience where the kid really feels welcome and safe. And so I think
Yes.
just basically doubling down on your point of meeting the kid where they are.
Meeting them where they are. They don't live in our world of words and explanations and agendas, right? And all that. They
Yeah.
live in an imagination based world, and that's where we want them to live as long as they can.
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to talk more about tools that parents can use with their kids so that they can actually see tangible benefits within their lives. So I know you have this one very well done TED Talk called Bite-Sized Mindfulness, where you talk about how even small mindful moments can really just set the tone for teachers and parents. So what are some
Right.
ways that a busy family can even insert small mindful moments into their routine to make a difference in their kids' lives?
Yeah. Well, first, the secret formula is short, kid friendly, and consistent. And that's what my entire TED Talk is about, is how it doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be long. Like we talked about, 4 long, deep breaths. So about 30 to 60 seconds. Kid friendly, as we've been talking about. So it's engaging and meets them where they are. But the biggest piece, and the one we can talk about right now, is that consistency. So it's that proactive, making it part of your routine, attaching it to something you already do every day. You're already doing the wake up and the breakfast and the driving to school and the mealtime and right? You're already doing all those things. So attach these small moments of mindful connection with your child to these rituals that are already part of your day. And when it's becomes practiced and familiar in a child's body, so say for example you do bear breath every evening at bedtime, it's just part of your bedtime routine. Now when that grocery store meltdown starts to ramp up, you can suggest bear breath, and your child knows how to do it like that because they've done it every single night. Now I'm not saying it's going to be a magic bullet and completely stop that meltdown, but it might, or it might shorten it, or it might soothe it, right? Because now you have a tool that's in the toolbox, and it's practiced and it's familiar. So that formula is really important. Short, kid friendly, and consistent. I love to have parents set the tone for the day, and I have a lot of schools that do this too. They start a mindful moment right when everybody walks in for the day because it sets a beautiful, mindful tone. So, a great one parents can do in the morning with kids is called the weather report. And you just look out the window with your child and check what the weather is. Is it sunny? Ah, it's a little bit cloudy. It looks like it might rain. And then you say, what's the weather like inside you? Do you feel sunny today? Do you feel stormy inside? Do you feel, right? Because even very young children understand the concept of weather. And it's a great way for them to start to develop that skill of self awareness, to check in. How am I feeling? What a great practice for us to get into first thing in the morning. How am I feeling? What do I need? How do I take care of myself? And for you as the parent, it gives you a great beat on what's going on with your child first thing in the morning. If they're full on thunderstorms, you know something's going on, right? And you might tread lightly and not try to get that fancy outfit on them that morning and maybe just go with sweats instead, right? So you keep it easy. But it's a great self awareness exercise that you can just do first thing when you wake up every single morning and teach them that skill of self awareness. And there are loads and loads of these in my new book that go with every time of the day: mealtime, playtime, on the road, good night, all of the times of day you're already doing with your kids.
That is awesome, and I think just instilling mindfulness in any way possible, any aspect of the day, really just does set the groundwork for a very happy life and
Mm,
a life that can be less involving less suffering, less emotional problems going forward. I think if you empower the kids with the tools like you mentioned to deal with emotions and process things and know that, you know, no emotion is wrong and you're
right.
supported. I
Yeah.
think growing up that can be an extremely, if not one of the best things that you can do for a kid's well-being.
Yeah.
So,
What a
yeah.
valuable tool to teach them, right?
Yeah.
Not only are all your feelings all right, but you can handle them.
Yeah.
You can handle them. You're going to be okay, right? And you have the self awareness and the self regulation skills to cope with whatever comes your way. It builds resilience. This isn't something that's typically taught in schools. It should be, it should be because they're going to need it as they grow.
Yeah. Teaching mindfulness to kids, is there something that you discovered about kids that you hadn't already known?
Well, that's a great question. I think that It's really how strongly they live in that world of play and how you can't like, I
Mhm.
think when I started, I just felt I was more of a teacher, like, "I'm gonna teach you
Yeah.
this skill, and here's why it's important, and I'm gonna," and I just as I went along, I realized I'm really not engaging them when I talk to them about even if I put it in sort of, quote, "child-friendly" terms,
Yeah.
they just wanna play. Just build it into play, especially the age that I sort of specialize in, which is that pre-K to 2nd or 3rd grade.
Mhm.
They just wanna be engaged. They wanna move their bodies, they wanna clap their hands, they wanna jump and play and, be bunnies and be snakes hissing in the grass, and so, year after year as I've done this and worked with thousands upon thousands of children, I'm just more and more convinced, and that's why everything that I create is kid friendly and engaging, that's the way in. That's the way to teach them these skills is through play and through movement and through music because that's what they respond to. And that's the first step. You're not going to teach them anything. Every teacher in the world knows you can have the greatest lesson plan in the history of the universe. If you don't have them engaged, it doesn't matter. You're not
Yeah.
going to get it across.
Well, in that case, I think the greatest lesson plan would be whatever happens to engage them the best.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
perfect.
And,
Yeah.
I think to touch on a point that you made, like, nowadays, we are living in, like, a digital era with lots of screens and lots of technology, and that's something that I've noticed, at least with my younger cousins, that kids nowadays
Mm,
tend to grow up more on screens than they traditionally used to. So,
yeah.
how have you noticed any changes in terms of childhood development in the new technological era, and does that change how you approach mindfulness meditation with kids who are more drawn to technology as a outlet of play?
Yeah, this is a tough one because that genie is not going back in the bottle. Screens are here
Mhm,
to stay, the tech is here to stay. I have heard from countless educators, especially,
mhm.
how in early childhood it's really, really affecting children. They say even the youngest ones all have tablets, and even some of the mandated curriculum are now on screens. They get Chromebooks at earlier and earlier ages. And I don't want to get into, policies and boundaries around screen time. It's part of life. I don't want to shame anyone or anything like that. What I want people to think about is that it's the opportunity cost. What are they not doing when they're on screens? Think about it that way. They're not outside. They're not climbing trees. They're not running around and moving their bodies. They're not learning interpersonal skills with someone in their immediate environment. And those are huge. So if we think about it that way, I think it's almost easier than going, how many hours a day or should they not be on screens and what should they be? No, think about how much they need to move, how much they need to be outside, which is every day and a lot, by the way, right? How much they need to play with kids in the same room to learn how to take turns and make up a game and, negotiate the rules and share the toys. And all those things are a lot. And if you think about it that way, then you kind of do, well, there's a little bit of time left over here for that special show. Absolutely. We watch it as a family and then the tablet goes back in the drawer. I mean, there's ways to do it, and again, I I just you don't wanna shame anybody, and everyone has different ways that they do it with their family, but thinking about it, sort of flipping that on its head for what they're not doing and what needs to happen outside of the screen world, I think is helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, just finding a way to make screen time valuable for the kids, like, meeting them where they are. Like, screen
Right.
time, it doesn't inherently have to be bad. There can be good things that the
No,
kids consume on their screens. Like, they could be meditating on Cappy's journey, or they could be
absolutely.
watching, whatever positive content. It is really ties back to getting kids to do positive things for them, movement, breathing, socialization, whatever works in
Right.
whatever aspect of life, yeah.
Yeah, and those healthy outlets on screens, at healthy content, that your wonderful app that you're developing, some shows, can encourage some of that, right?
Yeah.
There are good ones that encourage some of that. And there are some that are, in my opinion, a total waste of time. But, that's we all have our different opinions. So I think there's the right balance. I just want people to think about what children really do need for their healthy development first and put that in place first. Put that in your daily routine, make that non-negotiable and then go from there.
Right. Definitely. And if a parent could take away like one simple practice from this conversation to use with their kid, what would you want that practice to be? Apart from just, incorporating mindfulness into the everyday routines of life that we've already mentioned, is there any other practice that is simple that you would say would be very valuable for a parent to include in their with their kid?
I mean, for a parent, I would say it's calming yourself down
Mm,
is really what it is because
yeah.
our children's nervous systems are mirrored to wire ours. And when we are stressed out and chaotic and frantic, that gets mirrored right back to us. When we find our calm, our relative calm, I don't mean zen, there's no way that's going to happen all the time, especially with young children.
Yeah.
A better word is probably grounded. Our children sense that and they feel that sense of safety and a solid foundation, and their behavior flows better as a natural result. So, a practice I would say for parents is especially when you feel the tension rising, when you feel the frustration bubbling up, do a quick body scan. Just pause. Just pause. I mean, 10 seconds and just go from head to toe. Where do I feel? Your shoulders might be up here, right? Or you might be really tense in your body or you something and just breathe and just notice and then proceed because the best resource we can give our kids is the most grounded version of ourselves. We want to give them the best of everything. All of us do. But the truth is the most valuable thing is that grounded version of ourselves, not that frantic, stressed out version hollering from the other room. That doesn't help anything. That's co-escalation and that just makes things harder and makes them dig in their heels and not want to get their shoes on and get in the car.
Yeah.
But when we take that 10 seconds, maybe it's a body scan, maybe it's another mindful practice. By the way, there are tons of them in my book that are quick and easy. And we pause and we find our relative calm. And then we go to the child and say, it's time to get shoes on. It's time to get in the car. It's it's a completely different ballgame. And when we get in the habit of practicing things like this at regular points throughout the day, things go just much more easily and it's more joyful and fun in the home.
That's a great point. And I think touching on what you just said, maybe one of the best gifts that a parent can give to their child is just their own presence and their own
Mm,
kindness. And really
yes,
the way that I'm understanding it is that as a kid grows up, a lot of the influence that they're getting from their parent simply is how their parent is just acting in front of the kid. The kid embodies whatever personality or way of living that the parent kind of represents. And so if you live a more mindful, calm life, you don't have to be, meditating all the time, but just like you
right.
mentioned, calming yourself down, staying collected and grounded in those heavy moments. Maybe that is one of the keys for allowing kids to develop mindfulness apart from just shoving it to them.
Exactly. And that's beautifully said because children don't do what we say to do,
Yeah.
they do what we do.
Yes.
And there's a big difference. So if we're telling them to calm down and focus, but our state is frantic and chaotic, they're not going to get that message. The words are going to go right over their head.
Right.
What they're going to observe and feel is your chaos and your stress and your worry and whatever it is. So it's not to say the words are not important. They are, but they will do what we do far more than what we say to do. So it is, like you said, you just put it really great, modeling that behavior that we want to see in them. We want them to be able to calm themselves. We want them to be able to focus their attention in a sustained way. We have to model it. It's really important.
That's amazing. And if there's one message that parents could take away from our conversation today, what is a message that you would give to them?
It doesn't have to be so hard. I think a lot of parents are really kind of white knuckling their way through parenting because there's a lot to worry about, both in your home and with your kids. And are you doing things right and in the outside world? But joy doesn't need to be this reward at the end of a long to do list, right? Fun and connection don't need to be rewards at the end of something. They can be woven into regular moments throughout your day. When you make these small mindful activities, these connection practices part of your day, in the car, at mealtime, at bedtime, whatever it is, it's quality of the time, not quantity, right? It will create a deeper bond between you. It will create a deeper connection, and it'll just be more joyful and more fun.
Very well said. Thank you, Kira Willey, so much for coming on the podcast today.
My
It was really a pleasure,
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
of course.
If this conversation resonated with you, bring these skills home to your kids. Cappy's Journey is a free gamified mindfulness app that helps kids build calm, focus, and emotional awareness through playful daily practice.